Gonna work on YouTube though. All right, we are live, it looks like, on YouTube. Here we go. Oh, there we go. All right, we're live. Welcome back, everyone. And thanks for joining us again today for our fly fishing festival on Friday night. And I'm excited because we have Nick Blanco, who is a signature tire for Montana Fly. And he's tied one of our shop favorites that we seem to sell out of quite quickly, the Heisenberg. If you haven't seen that one, it's a great fly. We'll get more of those in soon. And he's going to be tying a few flies. He is an educator out of Fort Collins, and he does a lot of good work there, as well as just inventing a lot of really cool flies that I'm excited to check out today. And also, I hope you guys are too. Just so you know, we have giveaways going on. You can sign up in the link here on this YouTube video in the caption below. So make sure you do that. And tomorrow at the shop, 8 a.m., make sure you're there. We got 30 swag bags to give away for everyone who gets there first. And then a lot of events going on, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of giveaways, deals, demos, all of that sort of good stuff. So we look forward to seeing you. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick so I don't just keep talking, you see my face. And whenever you are good to go.
All right, what's up, guys? My name is Nick Blanco. I am a fly tire hack guy that just likes to do some crazy stuff sometimes on the Vice. Like Andy said, I'm actually a principal. Shockingly enough, so if any of my old high school teachers are tuning in, congrats. So yeah, I love tying flies. I love fly fishing. I've been doing it since I was about 14. Prior to that, I would use a fly and bubble on a spin rod, and of course, just bait fishing as a kid. So I think a lot of times people try to say, well, I got this young Grom and he's 2, and I'm going to give him a 7 weight to start chucking streamers. Although I do approve that, I don't think that's necessarily the most effective way to get your kid into fly fishing. So try not to force that upon your child, just like anything else. Those of you that kind of felt like you were forced to play sports, don't do that. So yeah, I'm right now I'm in Windsor, Colorado. So the whole idea behind Wyco Flyco was, growing up, I would fish Wyoming and Colorado pretty equally, just because of where I was located growing up in Loveland. So just I enjoy throwing streamers. I think that's a pretty fun, I guess gangster punk rock way to fly fish. Productive, as maybe nymphing or other techniques, but it's definitely fun when you get that hard take. So I'm just gonna kind of go through typically what I tie, and I know that our Lord and Savior Kelly Gallup likes to tie gigantic articulated streamers. I tend to tie stuff that's more on the smaller side, so it tends to be something along about 3.5 inches is a typical size. So a size 4 hook and a size 6 hook. I like to use the Arex NS 122s, which is actually a Nordic salt hook. But what I found is when I was tying B10S Gamakatsu, the number 6 hook was breaking at the bend for some people. So I kind of made that switch. So if you don't have Arex hooks, you can use any type of light dinger type of hook. So I'll just go through typically how I put a fly together. So I always start with a size 6 hook, and I apologize, you might not be able to see that very well with the color. I didn't wear a bright blue fly tires shirt, so we'll go with it. And please feel free to heckle me. Tell me I'm a chump. I enjoy that. It helps my confidence. So please feel free to comment in the comment section. So as far as thread goes, I use the UTC 140 on most of my flies. On bigger flies, I would use like 210. But 140 seems to be pretty good. I've used UTC for many years. I know that like Semperfly has some pretty good thread out there, but I just always seem to stick with UTC. So when you're grabbing marabou, nothing drives me crazier than if you get a pack of marabou and it's just like those long little stringy pieces and it just doesn't have good flow to it. So I'm just kind of picky about that. So sometimes I end up throwing about a quarter of the bag away just because I just don't like the way it turns out. So like anything else, you basically measure hook length and then just set it on there, tie it on. What I'm tying right now is like my version of like a Goldie. This pattern works really well up in Wyoming on streams, Colorado, even down in your neck of the woods on the Juan. I have a guide in New Mexico that really likes to throw these types of streamers. He also throws like a purple color streamer, so kind of crazy. Next, take some crystal flash. I just take one strand and just double it over, so it'll have two pieces of flash on each side of the tail.
And for anyone watching now wondering about the San Juan, seems like white or olive and white work really, really good on the San Juan. So
yeah, white, and then I know on some of your lakes the white Heisenberg. You guys like to throw that for the smallmouth.
oh gosh, for sure. We had
All
one.
right, so
Oh, go ahead.
what I'll do is I take UV polar chenille, which is just really stringy, lots of flash in it, and I'll tie a piece of that on. So I don't put in the past I would put like just a basic like Estes or some sort of smaller chenille, like wrap it on. Now I just put just one piece of polar chenille and one feather schloppen. So I'm using white. You can use tan. Um, either one is appropriate for this kind of like color scheme. So you're just kind of trying to get whites and golds and tans kind of mixed in, make it look pretty natural. All right, and then definitely not my technique, but I just spin them together for like a complex twist method. So as you're spinning these, I like to take I like the Stanfo brush personally. I just like the way that it brushes stuff out, but I use the comb part usually to kind of just capture all those fibers in the flash and just kind of make them nice and even. When I'm wrapping, I like to just kind of take my time and I don't know what this is called, preening the feathers or the materials kind of out of the way. And then you're just going to wrap up. And don't worry if it doesn't look perfect. I'm going to kind of go over a technique for making the head of the fly with dubbing look really good. And I actually learned that technique from watching Jerry French, who I believe is out of like Washington, sort of a big spay guy. So you'll wrap that up and then you just trim off the excess. And you can kind of see it has that just ugly looking head right there, and that's okay. Just can kind of wrap the thread over it to clean it up. Not too much, but just enough. Then I'll just kind of brush the captured feathers and flash out of the way. Next, what I do is I like to get, I try to keep everything kind of like color schemed for the most part, just because it looks more like a bait fish. But if you're going with something like black and purple, I mean, that's pretty bright and flashy. So, but if you're trying to keep it more like a Goldie or maybe, like maybe making it look more like a white fish, you're going after some bigger trout, I like to keep it with the golds, tans, and whites. So I'll just take some, I don't even know what color it is. It's like brown and clear rubber legs. You can pick those up at Duranglers. They carry all these materials in stock. And then what I like to do is I usually just bring the two pieces on the back end and just wrap over. And then what I'll do is I'll pull the other two pieces kind of forward onto the top of the hook. And then I'll just secure it down. And then I'll wrap back and then kind of clean it up. It doesn't have to look perfect on the back hook, because the front hook will kind of hide some of it. And again, it catches fish. So it doesn't have to be the most perfect looking fly. I'll just secure that, tie it off. And then as far as trimming legs, some people like to leave them really long, dangling off the back. I usually try to have it just past the end of the marabou, the tail there, not pulling too tight. If you pull it too tight and you trim it, it's going to actually be short. So you just barely pull on it and then just trim it off. And then I'll just come back in and brush it. And then on all my flies, I try to secure them with super glue or some sort of head cement, just to make them more durable. There's nothing more frustrating than buying a fly and it falls apart after like catching one fish, or in my case, hooking a tree or a rock. Because again, I'm a professional. All right, so you got that. You could fish that right there, just totally fine. You could toss that in. Basically, these are all like woolly buggers. Let's not kid ourselves. For all you tough guys out there that invented a pattern in 1980, good job. Thank you. Paving the way. All right. So then what I do is I take the number 4 hook and I put a cone on it. And this is like a pearl white cone head. Sometimes I'll use gold. So feel free to experiment. Gold works just as good as white. I don't know. I haven't taken a survey with the fish. I don't know what Family Feud would say as far as how many housewives picked gold over white. So little hack here. Instead of using the Senyo wire, which you totally can, and it's super supple and super durable, I use the I'm sponsored by Joanne Fabric. Shout out Joanne. Appreciate it. I use the Joanne Fabric. I don't even know what it's called, the Bead Buddy. It's just the comes in the blue. It's the 19 strand wire. It's super durable, and I like how it bends. It's not too stiff. So I use that for my flies, but you can definitely use the Senyo or whatever else you might choose.
Do those come in different sizes, that wire?
Yeah, it comes in I think like 19, 14, and 7. So
Okay.
if you want to use, like, let's say you're trying to put together something for like pike, maybe you want to put like a 7 strand. It's going to be a little bit more not as much give, but it'll work and it'll probably be super strong.
No, cool.
Even the 14 strand would probably work as well. Okay, and in typical rookie fashion, I forgot my lead, so we'll just pretend I put lead on this. So usually I'll put about 8 wraps of lead wire or the non-lead wire on this to just secure the cone head. But since I don't have it, I'm actually tying in my basement right now because my kids have piano lessons upstairs. So typically I tie in the office / piano room. I don't have a separate shop or shed or a whole basement. At one point in time, I actually had my tying stuff down here in the basement, and we had a hot water dispenser where the tank is underneath the sink. Okay, so my wife's family's Persian. They're from Iran, and so they like to have hot water or hot tea that like melts your face off. And so we installed one of those under the sink. It's just a little box type of thing that heats the water up really fast. Mm-hmm. Well, we had gone on spring break and we came back that night, and my wife wakes me up and she's like, "It sounds like water's running." Like, whatever, go back to sleep. And so finally she's like, no, seriously, it sounds like water's running. So I get up and it's dark in my house and I walk into the kitchen. As soon as my foot touches the tile, I feel water. And I'm like, oh crap. I turned on the light and it was like my whole floor had, a layer of water and it's just pouring down underneath my basement. So it
Oh, perfect.
started to flood. It'd been going on for like probably 6 hours. Flooded my basement, all my fly tying materials, because I don't keep stuff neat, put stuff away after you tie one pattern.
Oh
It was
no.
just completely destroyed. And so we've actually had our basement flood twice. So
Oh
now I
gosh.
tie upstairs, which I don't keep it super neat. So it's probably pretty embarrassing when people come over for dinner or whatever. So, all right, well, take the wire. Typically what I would do is if the lead was back a little bit, I would put the edge right bumped up against the edge of the lead. Now, some people like to basically tie on and then fold both pieces back over and secure over the wire on the back end. I don't do that. I secure it just flush right up against there. And then the second piece of wire, I'll fold back over and secure it. I've never had a fly. Of course, I don't sell flies to, the professionals that catch 35-inch browns on private waters, but just typical people that fish my flies that catch good sized trout have never had one break. All right. Next, one thing I used to tie my my articulated flies, with just plastic beads. And what I found is a lot of the guys that were fishing them, including myself, would end up throwing split shot on the front of the fly. And I was kind of like, all right, well, that's cool. Like, you can control what you want. But then what I said is there a way for me to weight the fly so that people don't have to throw split shot on there? And it already sinks at a pretty good rate. Nothing crazy. I mean, it's not sinking like a rock, but just at a good rate. So what I did is I started tying with tungsten beads. So I always put 2 tungsten beads. Forgive me, I'm not sure what size. They're not massive. Might be like 5/8 maybe, if that sounds right. Not sure. But I'll put 2 tungsten beads on at the articulation point. So just throw those on there. These happen to be like bright yellow. You can get them in all different colors. And then you'll just weave the back fly onto it and then just slide the wire back through. Right? If you don't know how to do this, watch a million different videos on there about articulated flies. I don't need to make you guys super bored. All right. Then I know some guys like to have a lot of play. Some people do it super tight. I try to leave a small little loop kind of in there for the fly, but nothing too crazy. And then I'll just wrap over it. Okay. Secure it down. Kind of ensuring that the wire isn't getting twisted so that your fly runs kind of wonky. And then I'll just wrap back over the wire a little ways and then take wire clippers and clip it. Now, one thing to point out is it does have a sharp end. So 9 times out of 10, I break the thread because I'm not a pro. And that's just what happens. So if that happens, don't panic. Don't throw your fly away. Just grab some thread and just wrap over it and then secure it. All right. So typically I would throw some more cement or super glue down to reinforce it, make your fly super strong. Okay, you're putting a lot of material, you're putting a lot of time into these flies, and so the last thing you want is for them to fall apart on you. All right, so you got that. You could probably fish that right now. Who knows? I don't know. Let's finish it though. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a kind of a cream colored feather, and this feather is actually kind of crappy. I don't like that. If you can see, it's got that weird webbing, so I'll typically just pull that off. You can kind of use a junk fly for this part because it's not as important. You're just trying to fill this gap right here. So I'll just kind of measure it out a little bit. And then what I do is I pinch it onto the hook and I just pull it a little bit forward. And again, it's okay if you can see the beads. It's okay if it's not perfect. It's all going to get kind of mixed together. Then I'll just wrap up and then just trim it off. Any harassing questions?
None crazy ones yet, but I was gonna ask about the weight in the middle there. Have you ever put more weight than that and just seen how something swims?
I've used a bigger size before, but
Oh,
I kind of felt like it just dropped like really quick. I like when I throw a streamer, I don't want to just sink the bottom. If that's the case and I'm doing like a sculpin pattern or something
yeah.
that's just right on the bottom, I'm probably going to um use like dumbbell eyes type of fly, or do like a belly scratcher
Okay.
type of setup, and put like a lead, nymph body underneath
Hmm.
um to weight it. So no, I typically don't. Keep in mind this is only a 3-inch fly.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
obviously if you're going up to like a 5 or 6 and you want to do that, sometimes what I'll do is I'll do like maybe two bigger tungsten beads and maybe even like a plastic bead
Okay.
in the middle or on the towards the back end, kind of playing with that. But as far as making it swim different, I mean, it just makes it sink a lot faster, in my opinion. Um, but
Yeah.
again, there's probably some pros out there that do, a 3/16 and a 1/27 followed up by a 5/8. Math's not my, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just making stuff up. All right, fun fact: if you go to Mexico, bring one of these cups with you, so you can put your margaritas and cold drinks in there, and they stay a lot better than the plastic cups. So,
Good call.
all right, yeah, we are just in Mexico. A lot of seaweed, a lot of seaweed.
What part?
I was just Cancun. It was a family trip, so no fishing for me. Just
Dang.
drinking. All
Nice.
right, next I'll take the crystal flash. I do another, again, just do two quick little um, sort of tag ins on each side. Does it make a difference? I don't know. I mean, there's so much flash already with the polar chenille. Maybe it's overkill, but I just kind of like everything to be kind of tied together and look good. So maybe it's more just for me. All right, same thing. You're gonna take your polar chenille, and then you'll get a new piece of schlappen. If you want, you could do two pieces of schlappen, different colors. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll do like a tan and a white on my Heisenbergs, like the Wyoming color or the baby rainbow or even the black one. Um, they tend to have uh, two different colored schlappen feathers in there. So again, you just kind of secure um, both the schlappen feather and the polar chenille, and just wrap it forward. I know this isn't like rocket science or like something that it's a new pattern that people have never seen before. People are probably like, dude, I already know how to tie this. All right, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Calm down. Calm down, tough guy. All right. Um, Again, I found that you don't need to necessarily put like a piece of like UV Estes to, unless you're trying to get the body like super duper thick. But with like schlappen and this polar chenille, it's already kind of sticking, kind of poofed out a little bit. So I don't really know that that's necessary to have to make the body all super chunky, unless you got really chunky trout that's what they prefer. Then go ahead. All right. So I try to wrap it up pretty close to the cone, but not quite. Next, what you'll do is you'll go back and you'll grab your legs again. Um, and then for the front, you can do it. You can do it kind of the way I did it before, but sometimes the cone gets in the way. So what I'll do is I'll just wrap one on each side and just fold it in half, and then you kind of just wrap it over. Doesn't have to be pretty because a lot of this stuff is going to get covered by flash, by dubbing. So don't panic if it looks ugly. I know some guys like to just do like just kind of wrap stuff up to the cone head, and then they put a ton of thread on it, and that works for them, and that's fine. I personally don't like that. It just, I guess my OCD kind of kicks in, and I'm just like, I don't like the way that looks, but whatever. I'm a weirdo like that. Okay, so you got a lot of stuff kind of in your way, and so in order to kind of work with the dubbing, I grab one of my daughter's hair clips. She's crying upstairs because I took it away from her. Sorry, sweetheart. And then what you do is you just clip all those materials down. You can buy these at Duranglers from Andy. He carries them in his purse. All right.
Confirmed.
Maybe, I don't know. You know, I saw on online that NBA stars and rappers now are carrying, you know, legit purses, Louis Vuitton purse.
I've seen this too.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Let's go. Maybe there's a Louis Vuitton river bag that'll be coming out soon.
I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like that's coming quickly or soon.
It's gonna be those people that drive the same Bentley SUV that's for fishing that has like, I don't know, something crazy, seats that like rotate and all sorts of crazy stuff. All right. Next, you're gonna take your dubbing twister. I use this one. I've had this one for years. This is just typical. I've done the Japanese, whatever that company, what's it called? CE? No. What's the Japanese company that makes like the fancy, like the metal boxes?
I can't
Someone
remember.
typed driving us nuts.
Yeah.
Anyways, they're dubbing, they're dubbing Twister. I haven't tried the new Schmemen, whatever it's called.
Samsonite.
It's like got like it squeezes to like open up, and then it has the hook on it, and then it's got the twister on it.
Okay.
That looks pretty. I've just stuck with Old Faithful here. You can put different ends on it.
Nice.
So what I do is I pull out quite a bit of thread, and then I'll just fold it in half. And you don't even need that much because you're only going to do about 3 wraps on this. And then anytime I do a dubbing brush, I always wrap over the thread like 2 or 3 times, and then I'll wrap forward. Okay, you can use your bobbin tender if you want, the wire that holds it out of the way. I don't. I just struggle along the way and get mad, but that's okay. All right. So what I did is I combined ice dub gold and ice dub pearl, and then I just kind of mixed them together. And the key with ice dub or other materials is not to use a ton of it. I think a problem that a lot of people do is they just try and just shove a ton of material. They do this crazy dubbing brush, and then it's just like all bunched up. And I just don't feel like the fly has a lot of good flow to it. You want this thing to swim nice, and the material's meant to kind of be flowy, especially a synthetic material like this. So that's something I've learned over the years, is just not to just put half a bag on there. You really don't need that. So although it looks like a lot right now, it really isn't. So what I'll do is I'll split the 2 pieces of thread, and then I'm just going to kind of, apologize, it's kind of hard to see, but I'm just going to kind of put it on there. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my fingers to kind of spread the material out. Again, kind of keeping it sparse, just a little bit. And that's about all you need. So it's only about maybe 2.5, 3 inches of material. Then what you're going to do is I pinch the thread, and then I'm just going to wind you can wind whatever type of dubbing spinner that you have. Just wind it, spin it, whatever. And then you're going to release the thread from your fingers, and it kind of spins. Okay. And then I'll do some additional twists. Then what you do is you just want to take a bodkin, can be any kind. And then what I do is I go back and I'm going to pick the material out. You can use like a dubbing brush, but sometimes it'll pull a lot of the material out if you're a little bit too rough with it. And then you're going to have this nice thin, you should be able to kind of see the thread. but you're going to have this nice thin sort of rope of material. Okay. The nice thing about this is I'll just unscrew it, and I just have this sort of top piece here. You don't want to let it go because then your material is going to go everywhere. So with one hand, what I'll do is I'll just start wrapping, and then I'm going to start picking the material, preening it back. Again, my bobbin's getting in my way, but that's how I roll. Right. And then even after the material's done, I will usually take like 1 or 2 wraps forward. And then I'm going to go about 2 wraps over the thread. Let's just do 3. 3 wraps over. And then I'm going to take 4 or 5, 3 or 4, whatever wraps. And then what I do is I come in right with my scissors and kind of force the material down, and then I'll trim it right by the head of the fly, right by the cone head. Okay, next what I'll do is I'll grab my whip finisher, and let me just show you, this is how you hold it. I know that sounds crazy, but I just saw someone doing a video the other day, and they were like using their fingers all weird to like spin it over. You don't have to. Let this do the work for you. So just put it on, wrap it over, and then you're just gonna, you might have to hold the material back a little bit. And again, the cone head on this is moving because I didn't grab my lead to push it up. So that's why normally it doesn't look like that. All right. Once you whip finish, then you can just trim it off. Then you're going to remove Andy's hair clip, get that out of the way. All right. Then what I'll do is I'll come in with the dubbing brush part and just kind of preen it back. Just brush it back. And whoops, I apologize. If you want to learn more about like doing like dubbing, like how to put dubbing together, that again, Jerry French has a great video on composite loops, where basically a lot of spay fishermen that make like different flies for salmon and whatnot, they do a lot. They build the materials onto like usually like a little tray or something, and laying different materials on top of each other, mixing it, and then putting it on and really working that material, making it super durable. That video really benefited me in my tying, just on making more durable dubbing loops. So come back in here, you trim it a little bit past the head of the second fly, and bada boom, bada bing, that's it. That is nice. A Goldie. Super simple, super light. It's still light even with those 2 tungsten beads, but it'll sink at a good rate. Also, if you're using a sinking line, I mean, that's going to get it down. I actually tend to fish a lot of streamers with a floating line. That's just kind of what I do. Probably because I'm amateur hour and I'm not like, what sink rate are you using? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going out there and throwing flies and hoping for something. So that is my version of Goldie, but nice. Pretty cool. Got colors in there. All right. Questions, comments?
For me, I mean, I think I was going to say the Jerry French I've learned a lot by watching him too. He's got a lot of really interesting stuff. I think he's credited with being part of the inventor of the intruder pattern, which is like a pretty big deal up there.
Yeah. You know, the way I started out is actually when my brother was probably maybe 14, I was like 7. My dad hired this guy to come over and teach my brother how to tie flies. It was the old school way, you know, a woolly worm, you know, a Platte River special, you know, these old school flies. And so I watched my brother and I was like, oh, that's cool. Didn't really think anything of it. Fast forward, gosh, I think I've been tying now for like 11, 12 years. So fast forward, and I just started watching a lot of YouTube videos. And so watching like, you know, obviously Fly Fish Food, Brian Weiss, kind of just, what's his name? He's going to kill me. that one guy. Anyways, watching just variety of videos that people would post online. And then what I did is I said, okay, fine. A midge, just a wire ice cream cone midge. I'm going to tie 5 dozen of those. Okay. And so I just tie and tie, same pattern over and over. So repetition. And then, go into like a woolly bugger, doing that and realizing that, oh, it does matter how you wrap the hackle. Otherwise it looks like a Tenkara fly, and nobody wants that. So just kind of repetition, wrapping those basic flies. I think sometimes, young kids, they think, oh, I want to be like, famous and make these streamers. And it's like, yeah, just tie like the basics first, then work your way up. But there's so many talented people out there that tie flies. And anytime I go to fly shop or fly show, or just even out on the river, just like looking at people's flies, I'm just blown away by the talent that a lot of people have. So, again, I'm not, a pro by any means. I'm just an average dude that just enjoys this craft. So,
But you did show at the Denver Fly Show, right? Fly fishing show. You presented there, right?
I that was my first time actually presenting. Normally I just go there and I heckle people. I think one year I I went around to every booth and had my phone out, and I just said, "What are your thoughts on Tenkara?" And it was funny because everyone was like, "No comment," and I was like, "I gotcha. I know why you can't comment." It's funny. Everyone can comment on here, but in person, they're like, "Well, I'm representing this company right now, and I can't really tell you my thoughts." The only person that did, ironically, was Tanner, old San Juan and Eggs.
Oh yeah.
Just flat out said it like it was, but he, I guess, gonna get away with that, even though he was working for Trouts. So, yeah, I enjoy just talking fishing with people. I've tied at the Wasatch Fly Show. I've tied at St. Pete's Fly Shop before. I I actually tied. My wife's in the legal field, and the Colorado Bar Association had legal education classes in Salida. And so one of the attorneys was like, "Hey, would you come and give a fly demo?" And I was like, "Sure." So I drove from Windsor to Salida, and then I was just fishing on the Arkansas for a little while. And then I went and I tied, and it was like in front of like 3 people. I was like, oh my gosh, I drove 3 hours to tie in front of 3 people, but I don't care. I mean, it's my passion. I'll do that. But yeah, I enjoy it. And, I'm hoping to be able to tie a little bit more here. Now that things for me are probably going to be slowing down, in my real job wise. So looking forward to, tying up. So I think next what I'll do is, I was going to tie a double mint, but I think what I'll do is I'm going to tie up probably my hottest pattern of the fall, this last fall. And it's going to, I mean, I can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be probably one of the most productive patterns for people that use this fly this year. I mean, my dad just went to a lake that the ice is starting to come off of it. So ice off is happening in very few spots, but he found one and it was just lights out with this pattern. So it is I call it the Schlobster. This is from, the claws are from fly skins. So you can order those. They come in a white color. And then you just basically get to utilize your creativity with markers and just color them up the way that you want. Now on this material, it has one side's kind of almost like a fabric type of material, and then the other side's really more suede. Okay. And so the fabric type of material doesn't take the marker as much. And that actually is okay, because if you look on the bottom of like a real crawdad, they tend to be lighter color on the bottom parts of their claws. Not always, but they do have a little bit lighter color in some cases. So it works. So you just kind of like scribble on a little bit. I like to add the little darker colors there. And then on this side, you can color it whatever you want. So I find that green, brown, orange color, and then I do like a purple color, which actually my dad fishes this color a lot and just kills it. My dad is retired, and he probably goes 2 to 3 times a week, and he does
Perfect.
a lot of fishing. And so I tie this pattern up in either a balanced pattern. And those of you that are not familiar with balanced flies, it's basically a 90-degree hook, and then it's a pin, like a pin that you would use to secure clothing with.
Sewing pin, yeah.
And then basically you put a tungsten bead on it, and it counterbalances it. And so then it rides up and down like this. The nice thing about this is when you're using an indicator and you strip it, it kind of goes like this. And then when you stop, it's going to fall. Just like a crawdad actually is falling. Like if it darts, it's going to kind of suspend and fall. And that's usually when you will get a strike. I've had cutthroats follow this fly right up to my feet, actually, and I'm getting ready to cast, and I hook a fish right by my feet. So it's a really enticing pattern. I'll send you some of these, Andy, and you guys can try them out at the lake
Perfect.
for mouth as well. So what I did is at first I was just tying it in balanced, and I said, well, I think I think it would also be a killer pattern in the rivers too. So what I did is then I just said, all right, I'm going to start tying it in a bigger 90-degree hook with a bigger bead for rivers. And then so I have that, and then I contacted Fly Skins, and I said, hey, I would really, because this is a size, this is size small. Okay. And I tie it on a size 2 90-degree hook. The hooks I like to use are the Mustad 90-degree Ultra Point. These things are, I believe they're known as steelhead fly or steelhead hooks. Excuse me. They're super, super strong. They're 2x strong. And I have yet to have a fish completely bend me out. And I'm talking, 20 plus inch trout. So great hooks. I like those. You can also use Arex 90-degree. I've used Gamakatsu 90-degree hooks. Pretty much any 90-degree hook will work, but you want it to be strong because, again, especially if you're going after big fish. So I contacted Fly Skins. I said, hey, I love the size small. Is there any way you could make it smaller? I want to tie it on a real tiny, tiny hook, because those of you that fish any sort of rivers or lakes, a lot of times you'll even find really small crawdads that the trout or bass are going after. So what he did is he created a size extra small, and this is size XX small.
Dang.
So double X small is as big, the whole fly is as big as one set of the small. So this little guy right here is on a size 8. And again, he only came out with these size claws about 2 months ago. So I haven't had a chance to go try it out on the river yet, but I really think that this size is going to just be super killer on like a dead drift even.
Yeah.
Having this on your bottom fly and a nymph, up top, or a stone up top, and just having this kind of drag on the bottom also with the hook, since it's jig hook, less likely to get snagged up. And I think this is just going to be killer this year on pretty much any stream, and even the lakes throwing that. So I'm really excited about it. It's been super productive fly for myself and the people I fish with. So I'm just going to tie one of them up for you really quick. Super easy fly to tie, and it's again, I just love the fly. It's super productive. So I don't put any lead wire on this. It'll all end up the bead. So this bead is a little bit bigger. I want to say it's a size up from what I use for my articulated ones. And again, I apologize, I don't know the exact size, so you can play with that. Basically just big enough to get around a size 2 hook. Okay. What you'll do is you'll wrap up to a little bit past the point of the hook. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to take your claws that you've already decorated. The cool thing is I think Kylie just came up with uh colored claws that are already pre-colored. So you still would have to decorate them, but he has like, I think he's got like black, tan, green, and one other color. So it takes a little less work, and you could probably just throw them on without having to color them. I'm just a little weird about it, and I like to have a little bit of variety of the color. So, all right, what you're going to do is you're going to put the colored side down, so you have the lighter side on top, and then there's this little tie-in tab. And what I do is from the point of the basically the edge of the back end of the claws, I'll line up with the bend of the hook, and then this should end at the tip of the hook. So that's kind of how I gauge where I want to tie it in. So you just hold it down, and then you're just going to wrap over. Okay, and the material, the claws will want to slip a little bit on you if you kind of don't hold them down. Okay, and then you're just going to wrap over that. So you get to wrap nice and neat right over that. And I apologize if it's hard to see. I'm not sure. I need to get a little bit closer. You don't need to see my ugly face anyways. You just want to see the fly. All right, next, what I'll do is I'll come in and I will grab, if I can find it. Oh, I have it here somewhere. Maybe I didn't. For the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to grab silly legs. What I actually like to use is I like to use the Montana Fly Company centipede legs. Is that correct, Andy? Is that what
Yeah,
they're called?
yeah. There's there's the sexy legs and centipede legs. Yeah, we have both of those.
So what I like to use is I like to tend to use the centipede legs, and they kind of look like this. They're round and they're barred.
Mm-hmm.
You can use just one of your regular rubber legs as well if you want. The reason I like to use these instead of a regular, just like silly leg, is these are a little bit more rigid, and I just like the movement of it. So what you do is you just you grab it, wrap it over the material in half, and then you're just going to secure it where the claws are at, that tag end that you tie in. Okay, so you'll secure that in, and then you just make sure that each sort of piece of the leg, which is actually the antennas of a crawdad, they have antenna or antennae, I don't know, plural, antennae, antenna, sure. All right, so you grab one of each, and then you're just going to fold them over so they're each resting on each side. And it's important to pay attention to the way that they're resting by the hook. And when you're tying them down, you really want to try and tie it flat so that they're not going to be like trying to roll over onto each other. Next, what I like to do is I like to grab just a tiny bit of like a bright, like an orange or a bright olive ice dub. Very little. Okay, again, not putting tons of material on. You don't need that. Okay, and then what I do is I just kind of preen it out and just have this nice little bit. Pull the thread down, and then you're just going to fold it in half over the thread. And then you're pulling it with your fingers, and then you're just going to secure it on top of that tag end. Keep in mind the tag end of the claws is actually underneath. So you're tying over. Okay, so that's basically what it looks like right now. What I do is I grab the material, and then I try to make it even over the hook. So half and half is resting on each side. And then what I do is I pinch the ends of it, and I'll just pull the excess off. So I'm only left with just a tiny bit. Not sure if you can see that, but just a tiny bit. Okay, putting that back in the hook. Next, what you're going to do is you will grab John Romer. He's a legend, such a cool dude. So Arizona Semi-Seal. This is great for leech patterns, balanced leeches, regular leeches. This is like leech material. So this is what I use for these schlobsters. So this is a Canadian brown. Canadians know a lot about still waters, so let's trust them. Shout out to Phil Raleigh.
Who is the other guy? Is it Brian Chan?
Not Brian Chan.
Yeah.
I've never met Chan. I've met Phil Raleigh, but Brian Chan seems like a nice guy too. Canadians over nice.
Yes.
Unless they're doing push-ups with their shirts off, throwing one-weight glass rods in Alberta. That's a different story. All right. Then what you're going to do, again, make a dubbing loop. Some people like to just put just put the semi-seal, roll it onto the thread, and then just tie it on. You can do that, but I feel like this is more durable with a dubbing loop. So again, I'm preening the material out, making it pretty even, just pulling it. And then I'm going to place it into my dubbing loop. And then I'll get more. Now, I know I said a little material. With this, I like to make sure that it's pretty covered to create more of that thicker crawdad body. So again, bringing the materials and then loading it into the dubbing loop. Okay, then what I do is I come back, I double check the dubbing loop, and I make sure it's kind of evenly spaced like that. Pinch the thread again, spin your dubbing spinner. Okay, and then let your finger go, and then it's gonna spin it up. Okay, now one thing you got to be careful of is the antenna wanting to jump back. Sometimes when you're doing dubbing loops, you'll get materials that get caught, and so you kind of have to pick it out, and you want to pay attention to that because it can affect like the back end of a fly. All right, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick it out for a second. Just picking the material out. And because you've spun it so well and you're a pro, you can come back with the dubbing brush, and this material you can kind of just like brush out. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to, the first wrap, you want to make sure it's pretty good on there and make sure it kind of hides the transition point from those claws. And then what I do is I just start pulling that material as I'm wrapping it over. This is how I like to do it. Some of you are professionals with a rotary vise and you don't need a high chair like me, and you're a big boy, and good for you. That's okay. But I need a little bit of just time. Okay, so I like to, again, sort of preen the material as I'm pulling it up. Well, if you did a better job of securing the material, you wouldn't have to do that. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Contact and eye on this format in the future. All right. Yeah. What I do is wrap all the way up to that bead. Okay. And then what you can do, the nice thing about like a dubbing loop is you can kind of let the dubbing loop go, and it's going to spin out. And then you're able to kind of pull the material back a little bit so that you're really only tying on very little material and mostly thread. So I'll do about 3 wraps over that. And then I'm going to do 1 or 2 back over the thread. Now be careful when you're trimming this because you can end up trimming it too short. All right. Then there's that tiny little tag end. You're just going to kind of secure it. Grab your dubbing, your whip finisher, and let the whip finisher do the work. You don't need to like hold its hand. And then you're just going to let it go. And then you're going to trim it. And then what I like to do is I like to come in with a little bit of like head cement or glue and just drop a little bit down in the head of the fly. And then just, you can go back over with a bodkin or whatever, right? Now, moment of truth, if you actually did a good job, again, a Jerry French type of technique is to brush the material forward. Brush all that material forward, and you'll notice there's like a gap right here. That is okay. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to start pulling that material back. Just brushing it. Again, I like the Stanfo because it can kind of go underneath the hook versus like something like a toothbrush. Can't necessarily do that. And then you're just going to kind of pull the material. Now, what I'll typically do is that's a finished fly. But what I'll typically do is I'll go and dip these in hot water and then just kind of train the material a little bit. That's a Phil Raleigh trick, I think, or maybe it's Brian Chan with like balanced leeches, things like that, this type of material. And then you can kind of form it a little bit more. But super easy pattern right here. This will work pretty much on any river, any lake, carp, bass, trout, you name it. I don't know, pike maybe in your neck of the woods. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. But cool little pattern, does a great job. And I've actually used jig hook and balance equally on an indicator in a lake, and it didn't matter. They went for the fly pretty much equally. So
Nice.
Don't feel like, oh, I don't really know how to tie a balanced fly. I can tie a jig hook type of fly. Do that. It's totally fine. Questions?
I just was going to say, I feel like we have a lot of people who, especially on the Animus, underestimate the amount of crayfish in the Animus, especially the lower Animus, even on kind of lower San Juan areas, and you should be fishing crayfish. That looks like a great pattern for that for sure.
Well, I'm going to send some your way just so you guys can try it down
Sweet.
on your neck of the woods. I could pretty much, as long as you can throw a fly rod and you know how to detect strikes, I pretty much see that you will catch some on this pattern.
Awesome.
Again, great for carp too. Yeah. Speaking of carp, I'm a big grass carp guy during the summertime. Up here in Windsor, we have 1-2 rivers, but it gets really warm, and then you got to head up higher, and then everyone and their brother is fishing every single bend in the river. So a lot of times I'll just go to the lower rivers as they flow through the cities.
Yep.
So I'll fish in rivers. Now, when fishing for like common carp in a river, I will actually put on the smallest indicator, and I'll use like nymphs, San Juan worms, or whatever, and I'll just let it barely go. And because what I've noticed is, like with carp, if you're fishing to them and you can't really see them, you're not sight fishing. It'll be very little, tiny little takes a lot of times. So that small indicator really is for me. Lets me know that I'm getting a strike from like a common carp.
Sweet.
And I'm not fishing in Denver. I'm talking more up north in Fort Collins. Grass carp are a whole different animal. They've been very frustrating, probably for a lot of you that have tried them. Andy, you were saying, yeah, ponds, but they're just so super picky. So you kind of have to think, how do grass carp take flies? So typically, I don't know, maybe some of you have been lucky enough to get one feeding on the bottom. I never have. I've got them feeding right up against like the grass on a bank, but never tailing like 15 feet out. So typically they're up on top and they're taking stuff, grass. Maybe they're taking some bugs, but typically in a very picky sort of area, they're going to take like vegetation. If there's a cottonwood hatch, I always think that's hilarious. We call it a cottonwood hatch. All right, cottonwood tree like everywhere, and your allergies are crazy. You got snot everywhere. You're miserable, but you're like, I got to fish. So using something that imitates cottonwood seed, puffball type of thing, maybe it's something that has CDC in it, foam with something else, seems to occasionally get their attention. But I will say probably you're only gonna, for every 10 grass carp that you cast to, you'll be lucky if like one of them on average. Okay. Now, if you have private water where you can throw a cigarette butt and they'll chase it down, great. But on average, you'll maybe be lucky if you get like 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 to actually go for it. I mean, I've spent hours before at a pond just like losing my mind using 20 different flies. And the key is it's about a 6 to 3 inch um, space that you need to cast to. This is just what I've found. You can talk to the pros. Um, there's guys, there's a guy out of Wisconsin. I apologize. I forget his name. I think it's like Freshwater something. He's a guide for carp. Larry, I think last name's Dotzel. Pardon if I don't know your name as well. Out of Nebraska, he knows a ton about grass carp. Dan up in South Dakota, he's a carp guru. So there's a lot of guys out there. And then there's also your Arizona grass carp guys. That is a completely different ball game as well, because those grass carp are in a canal and they act a little bit differently at times. And you're using different techniques. But for those of you that live in Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, any kind of just regular state, Utah doesn't have a ton of places that have grass carp. There are some, but for most of the guys in like Colorado, Nebraska, maybe Iowa, Andy, I don't know, maybe you could speak to that, but typically they're feeding on top. So the key is, because they're so spooky, is to cast about 3 to 6 inches in front of them and then just wait. I developed this one pattern. I call it chicken and waffles, which I found out at the fly fishing show. That was somebody else's named their fly that. So now I'm like, okay, it's grass and waffles. I don't know what to say. Anyways, what I did is I took like a size 12 scud hook, and then I said, I'm having a hard time because as I'm casting to them, they're taking my fly and I'm setting the hook really quick and I'm missing out on them. What I did was I said, I need something to calm me down because I'm freaking out. It's like, I don't know, 20, 30 pound grass carp, and you're freaking out and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to catch this. So what I did is I tie like a foam tail onto the end using a braided line, and you weave it through and weave it back through so it like stays on, and I use little beads so the foam doesn't come off. And then what I do is I secure that onto the hook, and then you just use like a trash piece of hackle, kind of the puffy end, almost like a hybrid fly, like the John Montana hybrid fly. It's kind of like that. I use a little bit of semi-seal for the body, and then that's it. And so what I do is when I cast it out, that yellow foam, and I will color it up to try and make it look like some sort of bud off of a weed plant or whatever, not marijuana, but like whatever's there. I'm not a botanist here. So anyways, throwing it out and you wait. And then what I found is that I was more patient. So as that carp is coming up, they sometimes like to mouth and spit it out, but otherwise they'll kind of suck it in. And once that foam completely disappeared far enough where I couldn't see it, that was my indicator to set the hook. And I had a lot more hookups that way. Now, that's just half of it. Once you hook the fish, that's great. Congratulations. The next part is trying to land those fish. So because their eyes are like, that guy from like Star Wars that's like, get to the ship or whatever that weird looking dude is. I mean, they're just like right up there. They can see really well. And so what I found is like the grass carp like to kind of run back and forth, similar to common carp. And then as you're bringing them in and you need a longer handle net, they just see you and then they just pull back out. So it can be, half hour, 45-minute fight. And I'm talking with a 7-weight rod, depending on how big the grass carp is. Other places I've caught grass carp on hoppers, beetles. So if you have a place that they aren't super picky and you're seeing them taking stuff and you don't have chicken and waffles or grass and waffles, whatever you want to call it, a fly like that, try a hopper pattern or a beetle pattern, and then just be patient. Lightest rod I would recommend would be 6-weight, and you're going to have to really finesse them. 7-weight works great. You could use an 8-weight if you have an 8-weight as well. But the key is too heavy of a rod and casting those delicate presentations can kind of become a challenge. So I like the 7-weight, and then just being really patient using probably like a 9-foot leader. And so that's another thing is I use about probably like 2X And then for tippet, I'm maybe 3x as the lightest. And so it's kind of hard because you're trying to be stealth, but trying to have enough, um, strength to bring them in. Otherwise, they'll just snap you off. So that's my little grass carp spiel. I really would encourage people to just get out because they can. You can access them when you aren't able to. Maybe you don't want to deal with like maybe a bunch of people floating in down the river, down the Animus, or everyone's fishing the same spot, or you're not like really wanting to go to like lakes and fish for bass or something. So that's kind of a fun thing. And I love it, and I'm going to keep doing it, and it's just a great time. So if
Perfect.
anyone's ever in northern Colorado and wants to go grass carp fishing, hit me up this summer. I'll take you out.
If I'm up there, I will definitely do that. There's some grass carp ponds around here. I'm sure we have a few people watching from like Texas or wherever. So there's a lot there.
Yeah. Arizona, again, the guys fish for those typically in those canals, and they use kind of some different chartreuse types of flies. There's a couple guys there. I think it's one of the guides goes by Low Water Guide, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
He has a flats boat that he can take out, or a bass boat, flats boat out on one of the lakes around there, and he'll also take you on the canal fishing. So
Yeah, and that's what was it, the slobster?
Schlobster, yep,
Slobster.
Schlobster comes in small, extra small, and XX small, um, and that's just the sizes that I tie. So fly skins carry some really big claws. So
Mm.
those of you that bass fishermen, he also has a new material out there that's like it's like floating claws,
Okay.
that's really thrown in like weeded areas. So like Bill Dance style of fly fisherman. Shout out to Bill. That guy's a legend. Um, he's got a lot of cool materials on his website, so I'd encourage you to check it out. I'm not sponsored by him. I'm trying to, but no, really cool, like innovative stuff, like thinks outside the box, and that's like I nerd out on that. So
Sweet.
buy a bunch of like size 18 Adams, like dry flies. I will buy those from fly shops and from other tires. I'll do trades of like streamers for like dry flies. It's not my passion tying. I'll tie out of necessity sometimes, nymphs and dries, but never something I'm like, oh, I this hackle, that cost me $500 is the most amazing thing. That's great if you like to tie those. That's awesome. Good on you guys.
Awesome.
Any,
And
any other
I was gonna
comments?
say, yeah, talking about the slobster real quick. We have a presentation tomorrow at the shop at 3 o'clock. Captain Mark Engler is gonna be talking about stillwater
Yeah.
fishing, so that's a perfect kind of thing to talk about there. And just a lot. We have a lot of lakes in our area, so hopefully
Yeah.
people can
I
get
think
into that.
there's some people that are like, I only fish rivers. Lake fishing is boring. And yeah, for some people, they cannot stand in a lake. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how people go to like Pyramid and stand. I've never been to Pyramid, but like my dad likes to go there. Other people like to go there. I fish a ton of lakes though in Wyoming and even Colorado. And I'll stand, I'll wade out, fish from shore, or sometimes I'll go out in my float tube and using like damselfly nymphs,
Mm-hmm.
water boat. And then sometimes like some of the lakes will get caddis popping off on the top, and then towards the end of the night you just switch over to like a dry fly. I put on like a Goddard caddis and just like light them up. It's so much fun. So
For
you
sure.
can cover more water, and I will say you get a lot of the lakes in Wyoming, those fish grow so fast that I mean you can catch a good amount of fish that are all over like 20, 22 inches.
Oh man, for
So
sure.
I'm not saying 30 inches. Like if you
Yeah.
catch a 30 inch, amazing. So
Yeah, we have a lot of really good lakes here, and a few that can
and
get fish that
yeah,
big.
I gotta hit you guys up and have you guys take me out
Yeah,
on
for
a
sure. Love to.
down there. I'd love to do that. So,
Yeah. Had a one final question, just
yeah,
general fly tying. Are pheasant tails and peacock feathers still used for fly tying? And yes.
I'm. What are those? I'm just kidding. Yes. They do make some synthetic material that can come kind of close to like peacock curl. Pheasant tails are still, I mean, that's such a solid fly. I mean, you can tie whatever, but I have a ton of just plain pheasant tails, no weight or anything, just a basic pheasant tail. And I'll catch a lot of fish just on local streams, just on that type of fly. So I think they are. And, I don't, I'm guilty of getting the latest, greatest synthetic material, but I still think those naturals can be just super effective at times. The only thing about peacock that I don't like is if if the fish's tooth nicks it or you do something, it can unravel at times because the stem on that feather is just so thin. So I'm kind of hit or miss on the peacock curl, but pheasant tails I still utilize for. I'll get a bunch of 5 or 6 pheasant tails and then kind of bend them, and I'll use that for a damselfly legs on like balanced damselfly pattern that I use. So yeah, pheasant
Cool.
tail as far as material is still utilized, but don't fall trap to thinking that you have to get every single doodad. My favorite bobbin are probably these right bobbins. I love these things. Um, I just got for Christmas, I got some of these TMC ones. These are okay, but some of them still squeak like the loon bobbins. The loon bobbins drive me nuts because they do that. It's like, you want to hear the most annoying noise in the world. It's like pulling out thread. So again, try not, if you're getting into fly tying, just do the basics, tie a bunch of the same patterns, and then you can start moving up in difficulty. Um, Buying materials will save you money though. So go to Duranglers and spend a couple $100 and, you know, go through the materials, actually utilize the materials. Don't just tie like one fly and then let that material sit there. Like really try to use that material up, tying a bunch of different flies. But I would encourage you guys, wherever you're located at, go to your local fly shop. Most fly shops are actually cool people that work there. Occasionally run across a couple chads, but that are too good for people. I'm not going to mention the ones that I think are like that, but I love St. Pete's up in Fort Collins. Duranglers, you guys have always been super cool when I've come down to Durango. Um, you know, a lot of fly shops up in Wyoming, really nice. Stop by Fly Shop the Bighorns if you're up in Sheridan, Wyoming. They're a great shop. Talk to Coda up there; he's a good dude. Yeah, there's just lots of great fly shops. Go in there and just they'll kind of guide you on they'll ask you, what do you want to tie? I want to tie nymphs. Okay, they'll give you a couple packs of different hooks. As you become older, and I know I don't look very old, but I feel pretty old. Tie in size 28, like the Dorseys, those guys, they tie tiny flies, and props to them. I get up to a size 20. That's pretty much my limit on midges. I can't go any smaller than that. It hurts my eyes and hurts my fingers. So,
Well, I think we're pretty solid here. I appreciate it, Nick, very much.
all right, no problem. Everyone, go ahead and screenshot this right now.
There you go.
Go ahead and make a meme out of it. Like I like to fish Tenkara, or look at me, I'm a pro. And go ahead and post that up. Thank you
Yep,
guys for tuning. Andy, thank you guys. Appreciate
absolutely.
you guys. Yeah, I'll send you guys some of these schlopsters, and you guys can give them a go, and
Will do.
then you'll want me to tie you up like, I don't know, 10 dozen.
Exactly.
The shop.
For sure. All right. Well, you have
Cool.
a good night, Nick.
Appreciate you.
All
Take
right.
care.
You too. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, so thanks everyone who tuned in and sticking through it. Those were some good patterns. So just so you all remember, we have our event tomorrow, which is kicking off at 8 a.m. at the shop. And we're going to be giving away 30 swag bags to the first 30 people through the door. We have a whole bunch of other things to give away too throughout the day that you're not going to want to miss. We're going to be casting fly rods at the park, Santa Rita Park at noon. We got G. Loomis, Sage, Scott, and Orvis. There we go. I don't want to forget anyone. Reddington as well. If you want to catch any or try any rods out, we got our Stillwater presentation back at the shop at 3 with Captain Mark Engler. He's going to be talking about fishing our local lakes, and you won't want to miss that because we are going to be buried under a lot of runoff for a little while. So we're going to need to utilize some lakes to catch some trout and bass and pike and carp even. So come talk to us. We will have a lot going on. Look forward to seeing you there, 8 a.m. at the shop, Duranglers downtown, and throughout the day. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much for sticking out and paying attention. And this will be saved on YouTube so you can watch it later. And hopefully we'll have some of Nick's flies in the shop here